A surgeon removes healthy gallbladders for years, totally convinced he is saving lives. A bond trader at a top Wall Street firm conjures millions in fake profits out of thin air. And one of the greatest investors who ever lived watches $5.4 million slip through his fingers, not because of bad math, but because of a glitch in his own head. Here is the uncomfortable truth. Brilliant people do not make catastrophic mistakes because they lack brain power. They make them because of patterned irrationality, hardwired bugs in the human operating system. Today we are breaking down Charlie Munger's legendary framework, the 25 bugs of the human mind. And fair warning, a few of these bugs are running your decisions right now. Charlie Munger, the late vice chairman of Berkshire Hathaway, spent a lifetime studying these blind spots, the moments when a brilliant mind gets hijacked by its own evolutionary programming. His antidote was something he called two-track analysis. Track 1 is rational. What do the economics, the logic, and the probabilities actually say? Track 2 is subconscious. Which psychological bugs are quietly warping the conclusion? And his master tool for that second track was inversion, borrowed from the algebraist Jacobi. Invert. Always invert. Instead of asking how to succeed, Munger studied how to fail. In his words, he wanted to know where he would die, so he could simply never go there. So let's start with the invisible superpower. Incentive-caused bias. Munger called the response to reward and punishment the single most powerful force in human behavior, and even he admitted he constantly underestimated it. Here is the scary part. A perfectly decent person will drift into immoral behavior to get what they want. And the brain will quietly rationalize the drift until it feels virtuous. Need proof? Look at FedEx. For years, the company begged its night shift to load the planes faster, and moral pleas got absolutely nowhere. The fix only came when they stopped paying by the hour and started paying per shift, letting workers go home the moment the job was done. Overnight, the problem vanished. Same story at Xerox. Founder Joe Wilson discovered his salesmen were pushing older, inferior machines because the commission structure literally paid them more to sell worse products. The salesmen were not villains, the incentives were. Now here is the dark version. At Kidder Peabody, a bond trader named Joe Jett exploited a broken computer system to book immense fictional profits, and Munger did not blame Jett first. He blamed the managers and accountants, calling them unarmed midgets hand-carrying cash through a slum. The loose incentive structure practically invited fraud. And remember that surgeon? He kept performing unnecessary gallbladder removals, genuinely convinced the gallbladder was the source of all medical evil. That is the terrifying part of this bias. The actors rarely believe they are doing anything wrong. So, what is the defense? Munger prescribed what he called moral instruments, like the humble cash register. Systems that make dishonesty difficult stop the bad habit before it ever takes root. Benjamin Franklin nailed it 2 centuries earlier. If you would persuade, appeal to interest and not to reason. Bug number 2. The man with a hammer syndrome. To a man with only a hammer, every problem looks like a nail. Munger's prime exhibit was B.F. Skinner, the brilliant Harvard psychologist. Skinner's obsession with reward genuinely improved the lives of autistic children, But it also made him ridiculous when he tried to explain all of human existence through that single lens. And this is not just missing knowledge, it is a pile-up of tendencies. Instinctive bias, protecting professional reputation. Liking tendency toward your own ideas. And inconsistency avoidance, defending your public statements. Together, they brain block the specialist. The antidote is what Munger called a latticework of theory, mastering the big models from every major discipline, so you are never, in his unforgettable words, a one-legged man in an ass-kicking contest. Bug number 3, inconsistency avoidance, or the brain in chains. Your mind conserves energy by resisting change, so once a conclusion lands, the door slams shut. Munger compared it to the human egg. The moment one sperm enters, a shut-off device bars every other sperm from getting in. Your first conclusion works exactly the same way, and that is why public proclamations are so dangerous. What you shout out, you pound in. Habits, he warned, are chains too light to be felt before they are too strong to be broken. An ounce of prevention beats a pound of cure. So how do you fight a bug that is built into your biology? Copy Charles Darwin. Darwin trained himself to hunt down evidence that disproved his own theories, forcing himself to write down any disconfirming evidence within 30 minutes. Why the urgency? Because he knew that otherwise his mind would simply reject it, exactly like that egg rejects the second sperm. That is what real intellectual discipline looks like. Bug number 4, contrast misreaction. Your brain does not measure the world in absolutes. It measures contrast. Try the classic experiment. Put one hand in hot water and the other in cold, then plunge both into room temperature water. The same water feels hot to one hand and cold to the other. Your senses are lying to you, and real estate brokers weaponize this with set-up houses, overpriced dumps they show you first, so the merely overpriced home next door suddenly looks like a steal. And then there is the boiled frog. Heat the water slowly enough, and the frog never jumps. Small leaks sink great ships because the brain misses gradual trends until the outcome feels like destiny. But here is the bias that cost Munger himself a fortune. Deprival superreaction. Our irrational overreaction to losing anything, whether property, love, or opportunity. Munger once passed on buying extra shares of Belridge Oil, because raising the $173,000 would have meant selling something or borrowing. That near-miss feeling froze him. Within 2 years, Shell bought the company, and that one psychological glitch had made him $5.4 million poorer. Let that sink in. If it can happen to Charlie Munger, it can absolutely happen to you. Bug number 5, social proof under stress. Monkey see, monkey do is an ancient survival shortcut, but under puzzlement or stress, it turns lethal. When Kitty Genovese was murdered in New York, bystanders did nothing, because no one else was acting. Everyone else's inaction became the proof that inaction was correct. Munger called the extreme version the Serpico syndrome, where social proof and incentives fused into a nearly totally corrupt police division, and honest cops who resisted became the out-group. The same bug infests boardrooms as a culture of inaction, where directors nod along to terrible decisions simply because nobody else objects. The skill worth building? learning to ignore the crowd when the crowd is wrong. Few skills pay better. Now for the deadliest phenomenon of all, the Lollapalooza effect. That is Munger's term for when 3 to 5 psychological tendencies fire at once, all pushing toward the same end. At that point, the human brain turns to mush. Tupperware parties are the friendly version, stacking liking, social proof, reciprocation through a small gift, and inconsistency avoidance through public commitments. One bias you can resist. 4 at once, your wallet opens itself. The tragic version is the McDonnell-Douglas evacuation disaster. To pass a government-mandated evacuation test, engineers stacked authority bias from the mandate, stress from darkened hangars, and incentive bias from the pressure to sell the plane, all into a single test. The first run left 20 people seriously injured. Logic screamed, "Stop!" The Lollapalooza said, "Run it again that same afternoon." The result? 20 more injuries, a severed spinal column, and permanent paralysis from a 25-foot drop. So when you see a truly catastrophic, truly stupid result, do not hunt for one cause. Hunt for the combination. Let's zoom out. The goal of studying these bugs is not perfection. It is building a latticework of mental models that makes the big blunders rarer. Wisdom comes from hanging your experience on a framework of why and practicing inversion every single day. Munger loved the bequest of old Valiant for truth in Pilgrim's Progress. "My sword I leave to him who can wear it." That sword is the latticework itself, the discipline to strip away self-delusion and see reality like it is. The tools are on the table. The only question is whether you have the discipline to wield them. So here is your homework. And it is a gut punch. Which of your most cherished beliefs, the ones you would defend most heatedly, is actually just a mental habit you have been too inconsistency avoidant to challenge? Is that belief built on facts? Or is it just a comfortable error your brain refuses to evict? Drop your answer in the comments. I read every single one. And if this breakdown rewired even one circuit in your brain, subscribe and send it to the smartest person you know, because they are probably the ones who need it most.